Zhuravlev, lecturer at the Art and Design School, High School of Economics, Moscow. Avatar 2, the return of Avatar as ever-changing post-digital identity. Alexander.
Hello, everyone. Nice to hear you. Nice to see you. I'm a bit short of time because I have a lecture in 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to be reading, unfortunately, from the notes I've made. And probably that would be kind of my answer to what our shift to virtual space can bring us, can bring something new to our community and to humanity at all. So this is the first slide, and just see the translation. Oh, sorry, I need to show the screen first. Yeah, right. So is it fine? Yeah.
Yes, it's good. Just full screen. Yeah. Good.
All right. So there's a first slide. It's some sort of funny picture from Russian social media. You can see the translation below. It says makes one normal photo first time in 5 years, and me in all social networks next 5 years with all the same avatar you have. I've got. Why is this happening? I'm going to start reading. So we can hardly imagine the modern internet without user pics or avatars or other forms of human presence in virtual space. An avatar is a picture which is uploaded as a representation of oneself, one's personality. Uploading of avatar is like choosing a profession, a style in clothes, or other things that would allow to say once and for all, that's me. This picture and the reaction to it in social networks, the girl here says, it's me and my photo and passport, so the same as for passport. The picture and the reaction to it in social networks illustrate something similar. We're all familiar with this attitude towards our own representation. What makes it different? What makes it difficult to find a good photo for an avatar? Or user pic. So there's a collection of my user pics from different accounts like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Telegram, and so on. There can be many answers to that question. The first, you need to meet the basic requirements as well as unspoken requirements for the subject's appearance on social networks. The subject must be identifiable both by the other users and by the systems that ensure the functioning of the network itself. The photograph of the user should indicate that he or she fits the human society and the community of users. There are not so many options that satisfy these requirements, actually. The second, there is an abyss between the perception of oneself and one's image. The image is obtained through the mediation of technologies, the presence of which affects the result. In case of photography, those aberrations are introduced by the lens, its focal length, the type of the lighting, the dynamic range of the matrix, and so on and so on. In addition, a static avatar does not reflect the dynamic variability of our body and consciousness. It always changes. No avatar can claim to fully convey the identity of the user. So it's pretty obvious, yeah. The environments created by different technologies contain different versions of the user's personality. Stories on Instagram, VR chat, video sessions on Zoom, everywhere we are different. The splitting of personality in virtual world is our new normal. This does not interfere with communication with other users. Until last decade, frequent changing of avatars or frequent changes of person's outlook on their photographs is considered untrustworthy. Now, on the contrary, the desire to show different selves, as you can see here, it's kind of a challenge where Instagram models show how to make the correct poses to look beautiful, yeah, and how they look in the reality. Now, on the contrary, the desire to show different selves can be perceived as aspiring for a new sincerity. Speaking about the material world, one has to divide a person into soul and body. The physical body limits freedom of action and thought. The constancy of the bodily configuration is projected onto mental activity. Virtual space represents the maximum freedom from the limitations of matter and allows you to be yourself at maximum, which is in principle means to be anything you wish. If in the material world identity is a superstructure based upon a biological body, which is distinguished from the other similar ones, other people, then in virtual space, identity is a virtual body itself. Expanding possible bodily configurations in virtual space often follows the beaten path. This applies to a variety of virtual masks. Masks were traditionally used in shamanic rituals to free the spirit of the shaman from his human body so that he can connect with the world of deities or ancestors and speak on their behalf in a different guise. Some of the costumes in Charles Frege photographs are part of contemporary rituals and create a compelling sense of bodily and spiritual transformation. In virtual space, the physical body transforms into a virtual one, practically becoming a body without organs, reaching somewhat higher state in relation to a material one. The viewer's trust mode for this reincarnation is approximately the same. We do not merely believe that we have something uncommon before us, we rather see it. Natural body movements and facial expressions are complemented by new ones that seem unnatural. This brings together shamanic rituals and 20th century modernist art. Oskar Schlemmer put the dancers in strict conditions, limiting their movements by the costumes themselves, as by the way the daddies did before him. And he had strict instructions on how to move around the stage. The modified choreography of the body opened up an ideal world of pure moving forms and textures. The performers who could no longer move as people embodied who could not longer move as people embodied in human metaphysical harmony, which does not exist in the earthly world. Modernism has succeeded in combating mimeticism in art. If we transfer this trend to the reality of social networks, it means that the avatar may no longer pursue the unattainable goal of replicating the real appearance of a person. The absence of such a goal opens the way to experiments with self-identification in a virtual space where there are no restrictions or laws and in which corporeality is also not limited by anything. As a result, there are two types of self-identification through body in the modern virtual world. One is a desire to consolidate the identity and accordingly the appearance of the virtual body. We may call it conservative line. Yeah? The other is the drive to expand. The first, the conservative, is accompanied by the identitarian essentialism, as Mark Fisher puts it in one of his articles named Living Vampire Castle, the idea of an inner core essence or nature that needs to be reflected, imitated, and embodied in a virtual environment. The second path, or line, implies the idea of a performative construction of identity through a virtual body. Parallels can be drawn with the history of art of the 20th century, particularly with the transition from depicting to constructing or performing. So finally, the avatar, the first one. The first type describes the universe of the Avatar movie, this conservative one, which ends far from revealing all the possibilities of transportation of consciousness. With all the possibilities, the author of the film choose a new body for the main character, which only slightly differs from the original. It is also anthropomorphic, but more mobile. It is difficult to imagine a more boring choice, probably dictated by the need to arouse empathy in the audience, since something unlike a human is more difficult to emphasize with. Another example is of this conservative line. There are going to be three of them. Another example is Lil Miquela, the virtual model, which looks almost the same in all photographs since it appeared on Instagram. The third example is a fluid community. When identity created as a new body in virtual space is embodied in the real world, it becomes much more rigid due to the slowness and high cost of material production of costumes. Community members often choose it for long term. Before moving on to the second type, let us just go back to the early days of programming. In the middle of the 20th century, the first programming languages were written and the first graphical interfaces were created. The first presence of human movement in a virtual environment was the mouse cursor. Now you can see it here, and I'm moving a cursor. We are used to the fact that the mouse cursor now constantly changes its shape when moving, for example, in Microsoft Word, but we believe that it is natural for a person to remain the same forever. In the series Rick and Morty, human beings in the world of future technologies are not defined by physicality at all. In episode 3 of season 3 of Rick and Morty, one of the main characters of the series, Rick Sanchez, turns himself into a pickle. In the course of the plot, his pickle body is encased with new limbs transplanted from the rest he defeated. So what drives his constantly changing body shell? Carlos Castaneda described something similar. Shamans like Don Juan Matos defined their quest as a quest of becoming, in the end, an inorganic being, meaning energy aware of itself, acting as a cohesive unit, but without an organism. They called this aspect of their cognition total freedom, a state in which awareness exists, free from the impositions of socialization and syntax. So in 2010s, last decade, saw the emergence of a multitude of authors working in the field of motion design. In some works, for example, I'm gonna show some videos here and here. So in some works, there are moving figures with emptiness inside, as you can see here, the movements of which are similar to human ones. We can compare the motion tracking data needed to create such a video with the formless energy in Castaneda's description. We seem to see some manifestations of an animated invisible force, but not itself, not the force itself. The show of the, and here's another video. It's actually the show of a collection of Congolese brand Hanifa, and it kind of creates a similar impression. Well, actually, this can be also described by some notions from the works of Judith Butler. In Gender Trouble, she says, she writes, in imitating gender, drag implicitly reveals the imitative structure of gender itself, as well as its contingency. So it's kind of this performative theory of gender, but rather transformed into the virtual state. When we look at the images of Lee Bowery, the next slide, we can never understand who is wearing the mask and whom it represents. So kind of we can trace this story back to the this drag type art or drag shows. So it's much easier to create a fluid identity in a virtual environment. To do this, artists or content owners and authors on social media accounts can resort to a variety of tools, from Instagram masks to Photoshop and more sophisticated image and video processing programs. Salvi and Mattia Fical's accounts are filled with the various anthropomorphic forms of virtual bodies of their owners. So you can check it out here. Yeah. Rather anthropomorphic, a bit zoomorphic. Here's Mattia Ficard. It's a nice thing to read here. She has a birthday, and people say, "I'm glad you feel yourself now. Expressing yourself is the best confidence." So kind of, but she expresses herself in not only the one specific way, but in many different ways. Yeah. Those accounts are united by the desire to distance themselves from a usual configuration of human body. The environment in which the body is located has the characteristics of a familiar human spaces. The space in the picture is still depicted or reproduced from real life, while the identity or body of the character is being created or constructed. The same combination obtained when using Instagram mask. Right. Sorry. And we see a similar approach in the works of Carol the Kitty and many others. The analysis of multiple accounts allows us to highlight the problems of such performance in the social media space. Since it's impossible to imagine what would restrict the incarnations of the virtual body, sooner or later a moment will come when the viewer will not be able to see one incarnation and the other as incarnations of the same body. To put in simple words, they would probably see them as different beings. So kind of, yeah, it could be one person or one body or just two different bodies. So that's kind of create a problem. You can check it out, how she works with the Instagram masks. Right. So yeah, some accounts leave the viewer the opportunity to identify the image in different posts with the common virtual body. Some go further. In this case, the body turns itself into a set of virtually distinct entities, objects and forms from which a society or a whole world can be composed. Thus, the world here means embodied of one world of an infinite number of possible ones in a total virtuality. The virtual body constitution becomes the model for the structure of the virtual world. In this case, it avoids mimeticism and reproduction of material reality. This can be seen in the video from the Cool 3D World channel. So you can check it out. I'm going to be reading. So the video where the laws of physics, logic, human, and God are violated severely, I would say. To sum up, the ritual and the artistic practices inherit each other and give rise to an alternative representations of the form of thought, body, and life in a virtual environment. Autonomy of artistic and spiritual creativity on the internet is especially important in the post-digital era, where when the material world begins to transform under the influence of the virtual. The forms, sorry, it's probably hard to pay attention both to the video and to the text. So the forms of thinking based on the analysis of the material world and the subsequent human activity so far leads to the collapse of material world and humanity. Only an alternative virtual reality free from imitation of the material world is capable of generating a different type of consciousness and values, just as it is capable of generating new different forms of corporate reality.
There are questions, and there is one from Alexander Pesheeva. What do you think about digital clothing when one buys a dress only to place it on a digital avatar?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fine. I mean, it's becoming more and more important in times of lockdown. Yes, and it's actually safe for the environment to use rather digital clothing than the real one. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
there are savers.
Thank you. There is actually, yes, it seems like a lot of discussion on chat at the moment. Lady, yes, introduced Matière Ficalis recently did an Insta video discussing how online fashion influencers have a huge role to play now in a virtually led world post-COVID. And then Lev Manovich joined in. So what do you think? If there is any comment on this? Yes, you just have okay.
No, I haven't seen this video, unfortunately, but I sure have a look. I'm not sure what they're saying there, but I think that's I'm really like I would be really cautious about the collaborations of those virtual influencers or semi-virtual influencers with the fashion brands, because I really don't like what Limikela is doing and her authors, because it's like you tie it to the things that are going on in the material world, which based on the production of material things, on this capital and so on, and it's all actually put borders to the self-identification in the virtual world, because you have to follow, you have to be yourself all the time, yeah, to be recognizable, to gain some subscribers, because they want all the same. To recognize their famous model in Nikes and some other brands and stuff like that, and that's why it probably cuts this huge opportunities of the virtual world forever changing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And there is a question or comment from Rahul. Do we have any analysis regarding the carbon footprint of the technology involved? Also, the aesthetics and representation is very white. So what do you think about,
well, about carbon footprint, yeah, it's kind of an important thing. Yeah, there's a lot of research going on about the footprint of the informational technologies. Yeah, it's nowhere near the like carbon footprint of fashion industry or something, coal mining. But we need to pay attention to it. So for example, it's the main issue why we don't probably we cannot ethically use Bitcoins and some other cryptocurrency, because it has a really huge carbon footprint. Concerning the very white, yeah, I kind of agree to it, because most of the influencers or those people who create the virtual body in social networks, they are kind of a bit privileged, I would say, because they have free time to learn the technologies, to use them, that they have resources. And so on and so on. So you kind of cannot just do it right away from the I don't know, if you don't have any money, if you don't have any food, of course you don't have an access to this virtual space, and that's the thing that probably needs to be changed. Yeah, there's some action needs to be taken about that.
Lev Manovich would like to to comment quickly. So we have maybe 1
minute. 1 minute, yes. First of all, sorry I was absent. I had to send some emails to my Wishka students, actually. Alexander, I only saw part of your presentation. It was very, very rich, very suggestive. Thank you. I just wanted to briefly comment on what I see like in the chat. It seems to me that today many people think that 21st century will be more and more virtual, fashion will become virtual. I sort of disagree, that the previous centuries were virtual because physical environment was so bad. So people went to movies to forget, right? Or people read books. And if you follow my presentation, people value more and more material environment because it becomes more and more aesthetic. So people want to go on vacation, stay in design hotels, have wonderful food. And I think we'll see in the coming decades that the so-called virtuality will disappear. So sorry to be devil advocate as always, but I want to suggest that some people are very wrong, and in fact things are moving in a complete opposite direction into physicality, sensuality, materiality. The way in screen is just this early stage, because physical reality is always going to be better. But we can discuss later. I hope. Sorry if I went over my minute, Ludmila, but thank you so much. Just wanted to throw some grenade.
Yeah, thank you. Alexander, would you like to, to throw back the grenade?
Sure, briefly. So I wasn't talking about like a lot of people say kind of how you can go VR in the next century. You need to buy these things, VR goggles and stuff like this. But most people just don't have the resources to do that. So what I was talking about is rather the exploration of those possibilities of the virtual environment. So kind of, it's not exactly everybody will be using virtual reality and it will be Matrix in like 20 years. No, it won't happen because of many reasons, actually. So I was talking about that, for example, I would say kind of philosophy or human thinking would rather not be tied to a material world, but would be involved into in exploration of this virtual I can say an environment and the possibilities it gives. I would say it like this.
Okay, Alexander, thank you so much.